Imagine waking up on Earth, but the air is toxic, the oceans are poisoned, the temperature is hotter than any desert on Earth today. Every breath burns your lungs, every river is dying, and almost every living creature around you is already dead. This is not a movie. This is not fiction. 250 million years ago, Earth became the deadliest place it has ever been, and life on this planet almost ended forever. When people talk about extinction, they usually think about dinosaurs and the asteroid that wiped them out. But long before the dinosaurs existed, Earth experienced something far worse. Scientists call it the Great Dying, the most terrifying extinction event in Earth's history. An event so destructive it nearly erased all life on the planet. Not a small percentage, not half, almost everything. And the scariest part is that the enemy did not come from space. It came from Earth itself. 250 million years ago, the world looked completely different from today. All the continents were connected into one enormous supercontinent known as Pangaea. Imagine every landmass on Earth fused together into one giant stretch of land surrounded by a single vast ocean. The interior of this supercontinent was extreme and harsh. Massive deserts stretched across thousands of kilometers. Huge mountain ranges cut across the land. Forests filled with strange ancient plants covered wide regions. Life existed everywhere. Reptile-like creatures dominated the land. Early ancestors of mammals moved through forests and valleys. Giant insects filled the skies. The oceans were full of life, with ancient fish, massive reefs, and bizarre sea creatures that no longer exist today. For millions of years, life evolved and thrived. The planet seemed stable, balanced, and full of life. But deep beneath what is now Siberia, something was building. Far below the Earth's surface, molten rock was slowly rising. Pressure built for thousands of years beneath, the crust. Then, in what geologists consider a relatively sudden moment, the ground split open. Across a massive region of Siberia, gigantic volcanic eruptions began. Not just one volcano. Not just a few. Thousands of massive eruptions tore through the Earth's crust. Lava flooded across the land in endless rivers of fire. Entire landscapes were buried beneath molten rock. These eruptions did not last days or weeks. They lasted for hundreds of thousands of years. This region is now known as the Siberian Traps, one of the largest volcanic events ever recorded on Earth. Lava covered millions of square kilometers. But lava was only the beginning. The real destruction came from what the volcanoes released into the sky. Each eruption released enormous amounts of carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. These greenhouse gases began trapping heat across the planet. Slowly at first, global temperatures began to rise. Then they rose faster and faster. Eventually, Earth heated. Dramatically. Global temperatures increased by as much as 10 degrees Celsius or more. On a planetary scale, this was catastrophic. Polar ice melted completely. Oceans warmed rapidly. Weather patterns collapsed. Massive deserts spread across Pangaea. Forests began to die. Rivers dried up. Food chains began to collapse. Many animals could not adapt to the rapidly changing climate. But the worst was still coming. As the oceans warmed, they began losing oxygen. Warm water cannot hold as much oxygen as cold water, and as temperatures rose, oxygen levels in the seas dropped sharply. Marine life began to suffocate. Fish died in massive numbers. Coral reefs collapsed. Entire ecosystems vanished. Soon, large areas of the ocean became oxygen-free dead zones. In these lifeless waters, a different kind of organism began to thrive. Bacteria that did not need oxygen spread rapidly. These microorganisms produced a deadly gas called hydrogen sulfide. This gas smells like rotten eggs and is extremely toxic to most life on Earth. Hydrogen sulfide began building up in the oceans. The deeper waters turned dark and poisonous. Nothing could survive there. Eventually, the gas began rising to the surface. Toxic hydrogen sulfide gas escaped from the oceans into the atmosphere. Poisonous clouds formed and drifted across the planet. Breathing the air became dangerous. In some regions, simply inhaling could be deadly. But the chain reaction did not stop there. Hydrogen sulfide began damaging the ozone layer, the protective shield that blocks harmful ultraviolet radiation from the sun. As the ozone layer weakened, intense ultraviolet rays reached the surface of the planet. Plants were burned by radiation. Plankton in the oceans, which formed the base of the marine food chain, were destroyed. Without plankton, ocean ecosystems collapsed even further. On land, conditions became almost impossible for survival. Temperatures in many areas may have exceeded 50 degrees Celsius. Oxygen levels dropped. Toxic gases filled the air. Vegetation died across huge regions of the planet. Imagine standing on Earth during this time. The sky dark and hazy from volcanic ash. The air thick, hot, and difficult to breathe. The sun glowing dimly through layers of smoke and poison. Forests reduced to dead blackened trees. Rivers turned into dry, cracked ground. Animal bodies scattered across a silent landscape. The oceans no longer full of life, but dark, warm, and toxic. Volcanoes erupting constantly in the distance, turning the night sky red. Earth had become a living nightmare, and life began to disappear rapidly. Scientists estimate that around 96% of all marine species died during this extinction event. Nearly everything in the oceans vanished. On land, around 70% of all vertebrate species disappeared. Even insects, which are usually extremely resilient, suffered massive losses. Entire ecosystems collapsed across the planet. This was not just an extinction event. It was almost total annihilation of life. The closest Earth has ever come to becoming a completely dead planet. If humans had existed during this time, survival would have been nearly impossible. The oceans were poisonous. The land was scorching hot. The air itself was toxic. There would have been almost nowhere to hide. Yet somehow, life survived. In small, isolated pockets of the planet, certain organisms managed to endure the extreme conditions. Some plants adapted to heat and drought. Small reptile-like creatures survived with limited oxygen. Microorganisms evolved to live in toxic environments. Over hundreds of thousands of years, the volcanic eruptions slowly began to decrease. Carbon dioxide levels stabilized. Temperatures gradually dropped. The oceans slowly regained oxygen. The atmosphere began to clear. The ozone layer recovered. Life slowly returned. From those few survivors, new species began to evolve. Millions of years later, dinosaurs would rise and dominate the planet. After them, mammals would appear. And eventually, humans. Every complex form of life alive today exists only because some organisms survived the deadliest period in Earth's history. The Great Dying remains the most terrifying environmental catastrophe our planet has ever experienced. A time when Earth itself became almost uninhabitable. A time when nearly all life was erased. 250 million years ago, this planet became the deadliest place imaginable, and it came closer than ever before to losing life forever. If you enjoyed this deep story of Earth's darkest moment, subscribe for more true, terrifying history and real events that sound like fiction but are completely real. Because sometimes the scariest stories are not from movies, they are from our own planet.